A vehicle burst into flames after an Israeli airstrike on Gaza, killing 2 men. The strike comes in response to rocket fire from Hamas-ruled territory targeting Israel.
A vehicle exploded in the Palestinian territory of Gaza on Friday, killing at least 2 people. The explosion happened shortly after 2 rockets were fired at Israel from the Hamas-ruled territory, causing no damage or injury. According to local media, the Israeli army said it had carried out a targeted assassination. Israel often bombs militant targets in coastal Gaza in response to rocket fire, which gutted a metallic blue car, killing 2 men and wounding a 3rd. At least 2 of the victims were inside the vehicle when the explosion occurred, witnesses said.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Monday, March 12th, 2012, and I'm Darko. You can check out my website, it's ggnonline.com, and also on YouTube it's ddarko2012, and my other YouTube channel is ddarko2013. All the headlines and links will be posted in YouTube's video description. Alright, this first article I have up is U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carrier heads to Persian Gulf. I've covered this article before. It was basically the same video that's floating around the internet. It was a very well-made one too, though. But it was about basically this USS Enterprise being one of the oldest nuclear-powered aircraft carriers in the U.S. fleet, and basically, in order to dispose of it properly, it costs a lot of money. So they're just going to sink this sucker, and what better way to do it than off the or inside the Persian Gulf, and that will allow Israel to feel as if they've been attacked, and they're going to go out and start striking. So CNN reported the U.S. Oldest active warship will be on standby in case of a conflict with Iran. The Enterprise is as ready and capable as she has ever been throughout her 50 years, says the carrier, which holds about 4,000 people, have taken part in several wars. It will be deployed to the Persian Gulf together with other warships, forming a carrier strike group. And I love this comment down here. The Persian Gulf, the final frontier. This is the voyage of the USS Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explode strange new countries, to destroy all life and civilizations, to bomb what no man has ever bombed before. Captain Hamilton's log. We arrived in the Persian Gulf today with a strong feeling to commit more crimes against humanity. However, our arrival was not welcomed by the Iranian Navy. We set about in battle arrangement to invade their territorial waters and show them who's boss. However, they quickly sunk us to the bottom of the Gulf. I write this log while in Iranian custody. The spy master Mir Dagan on Iran's threat. This individual has been described as hard-charging and stops at nothing. Been the chief of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence, for more than 8 years, and he went on and spoke out publicly, voicing opposition to Israel launching preemptive airstrikes against Iran's nuclear facilities anytime soon. Then he was asked, do you think Ahmadinejad is rational? The answer is yes, not exactly our rationale, but I think he is rational. And that's the quote that they took. The regime in Iran is a very rational one, a former Israeli intelligence chief tells CBS. And what's interesting is that Ahmadinejad, who is now a lame duck due to the elections, is actually more friendly to the West than the Ayatollah and these clerics and that. And just because of the U.S. and Israeli's stance, the UK's, they're saber rattling and trying to instigate a war here with Iran, they've actually caused the more hardcore radical side of Iran to come out, kind of like in Pakistan and other places. So this is all a result of what they're doing. David Grossman speaks out against war with Iran. His first public statement on the conflict with Iran. David Grossman, a leading Israeli novelist of the past generation on the strongest voice of his country's moral conscience, told the nation that he is opposed to an attack on the Islamic Republic by Israel or the United States, saying it is the likely consequence were more daunting even than those of Iran building nuclear weapons. He basically went on and said, even if they do, Iran does possess or get nuclear weapons, that Israel is just going to have to live with it. Says here, who has more weapons than any nation, all the nations combined, most likely. Aircraft carrier Enterprise sets off on final journey direction Iran. So there you go. After the Enterprise leaves on Sunday, which it just did, 3 Norfolk-based guided missile destroyers will head out on Monday: the USS Porter, USS Nitsy, and the USS James Williams. This is interesting. It says that the aircraft squadrons embarked aboard the Enterprise are VFA, which is Navy, but look at this. Marine Fighter Attack Squadron, VMFA 251 Thunderbolts. That's interesting. I was on the same base as these guys, VMFA 224, the Fighting Bengals. But you want to know what's rational, guys, is that when in my unit that I was in, 224 Bengals, they actually had no mishaps, nothing. And we were supposed to deploy twice. Right before I got out, and they never did. And that 251 group actually had a plane go down right there on the base. Yeah, it crashed, right? And they actually got sent over before us. So that just goes to show you the rationale. We have here Egyptian MPs vote to expel Israeli envoy. So the Egyptian parliament has voted to expel the Israeli ambassador and halt gas exports to Israel. That's pretty big news because I've been following that. Kind of ties things together. As far as the regime change goes, are the MEK's U.S. friends its worst enemies? So for years, slew of advocates, many of whom have been paid for the services, have flooded the U.S. airways on behalf of the Mujahideen, a State Department-designated foreign terrorist organization opposed to the Iranian regime. UN Special Representatives in Iraq, Martin Kobler, with help from the U.S. Embassy in Iraq and the State Department, has organized efforts to relocate the Mujahideen to Camp Liberty, a former U.S. military base near Baghdad Airport. The first convoy of about 400 terrorist members arrived there last month. It says here that the second convoy, about 400 members, arrived Thursday at Camp Liberty, Reuters reported. So we'll see this, the rationale again here. A good example of it, U.S. Department of State, their own website, foreign terrorist organizations, and you go down, number 29, the MEK. Okay, moving on here. Mossad training terrorists to kill Iran's nuclear scientists. U.S. officials claim Israel is funding dissident people's Mujahideen of Iran, say officials in Tehran. Israelis build the world's biggest detention center. Thousands of African asylum seekers fleeing persecution could end up in the Negev desert camp. Human rights groups fear that the detention center, the largest of its kind in the world, with a capacity to hold 8,000 migrants, will turn into a festering refugee camp and deprive those escaping persecution at home of their rights to seek asylum in Israel. Military exercises, Agile Spirit 2012 starts in Georgia. U.S. Marines and Georgian Armed Forces are participating in exercise Agile Spirit 2012. Its purpose is to increase interoperability between the forces and exchange and enhance each other's capability or capacity in counterinsurgency, blah, 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 right? It's like a nice public relations statement. Israel planned to use Georgia airbases in Iran attack. This is from 8/20/2008. Israel, the Caucasus. Israel began selling arms to Georgia 7 years ago, and it was U.S. grants that facilitated these purchases. From Israel came former minister and former Tel Aviv mayor representing the Elbit Systems and his brother. It goes on here, it says, for Israeli UAV spy drones made by this contractor and conducted recon flights over southern Russia as well into the nearby Iran. And you remember in 2008, I believe it was, you had this, right? The president of Georgia, Saakashvili, evidently thought the United States would come to his side when if Russian troops pushed him back into Georgia after ordering an attack on August 8th of the breakaway province of South Ossetia. Yeah, that was a nice little false flag. And in the media, they were saying that Russia had attacked them, and they were calling for NATO to come in and all that. So.
More bloodshed. The opposition claims government forces are storming villages and killing soldiers who defected. And now the Assad government says it's found weapons from other countries. CNN's Nick Robertson is in Beirut. So Nick, the government says the weapons are coming from Israel?
There's nothing better than that the Syrian government would like than to try to say that Israel is somehow behind the opposition. Why? Because Israel is the enemy of pretty much everyone in their minds in Syria at the moment. So to say that would cast a huge shadow of doubt over the opposition and who was funding them, and certainly try and build support for himself, Bashar al-Assad. The reality is that we haven't seen any evidence from the Syrian government that there is any wholesale export of weapons coming from Israel into Syria. There's a real possibility there may be some Israeli-made weapons in Syria right now. The Free Syrian Army is trying to get its hands on any weapons possible. The borders between Lebanon and Turkey into Syria are all quite porous. A few weapons have been getting across from many different countries. But even if the Syrian government has found a few Israeli-made weapons, it certainly doesn't add up to their implication that Israel is somehow supporting the opposition. It just doesn't seem to hold water right now.
So there you go, folks. A nice little propaganda piece, just like Syrian Danny, or Zionist Danny, who they had to do some damage control over their little Mockingbird operation, little CIA operation going on, headed up by Mr. Anderson Cooper. They don't like when they get called out, I guess. It says here, Arab countries sending mercenaries into Syria. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Arab countries are sending mercenaries to Syria to thwart any chance of negotiated settlement to end Assad's crackdown on a long-year uprising of his rule. So again, this is kind of another propaganda piece saying that Iran was their partner, but now Iran's saying that maybe they should enact reforms to take account of popular grievances. And I think they just passed the constitution and they're open to talks and stuff like that. It says here, Russia accuses Libya of training Syrian rebels. So it says here, Russia demanded Wednesday that NATO apologize for civilian casualties during the uprising in Libya last year and accused the Libyan government of supporting and training a training center for Syrian rebels, provoking a sharp response from the U.S. and Libya Prime Minister. U.S. and their allies are beginning to talk of potential military intervention in Syria, and I've covered this, just in the past month or two, longer than that, but really it's been escalating as far as trying to declare a humanitarian corridor. It says a move to intervene militarily has no legal basis and could potentially escalate the conflict. Well, it definitely escalated, but there is a legal basis, and I'll get into that. Let's check out this video.
UN humanitarian chief Valerie Amos calls for unlimited aid access to Syria's worst-hit areas. Speaking at a news conference in Ankara, Amos said she had spoken to Syrian government representatives, but they'd asked for more time.
However, the government have agreed to a limited assessment exercise to be conducted by UN agencies and the Syrian authorities.
Of the heavy shelling follows a few days of relative calm, during which Amos visited Homs and said part of the city had been completely destroyed. UN and Arab League envoy Kofi Annan is due to arrive in Damascus on Saturday to try to calm the year-old conflict. Sunita.
So we're just engulfed. We're just swimming and drowning in this propaganda, right? Because what? Look at the title. UN humanitarian chief demands Syria aid access. Well, they've already been there. They've already allowed the Red Cross to go in there. They cleared out the actual rebels. Like I said before, so I've already reported on this. They've already cleared them out, so the Red Cross and the UN can go in there. So it's because of the government that they're actually able to go in. They secured the area. And then you just heard her right there say, yeah, they've actually agreed to allow them to come in there and assess the situation like they did to the Arab League. But the Arab League, of course, is sold out to the West and all that. So, and the Assad government answered everything that they needed to answer to the observers when they were in the country. So it says here, Syria UN envoy enters Homs with red crescent. It's basically Red Cross. So the UN envoy enters there, and Syria crisis Red Cross enters the Bava area and finds the neighborhood empty. Well, where are they going? Remember this article? Setting the precedent, NATO may use R2P to intervene in Syria, forcing millions of refugees to flee to Turkey's southern border. Some analysis claim that this would potentially constitute an Article 5 situation that could lead to Ankara to call for a NATO collective defense initiative. And I found this interesting that the people that are leaving Syria are going everywhere except for Turkey. So Syrian Bedouin find shelter in Jordan. And then look at this, Syrians fleeing to Lebanon feared slaughter in Assad's backlash. So I'm thinking that Assad's government's actually telling these people, if you're going to leave, just don't go to Turkey. Go anywhere, go to Lebanon, go to Jordan, but just don't go to Turkey. Because if you do, they're gonna declare a humanitarian corridor and they're gonna start bombing the shit out of all of them. But they'll say, oh, they feared slaughter and Assad backlash. You probably ask one person while the rest of them probably didn't want to talk to him because they knew they're gonna put a loaded headline in there like that. U.S. servicemen kill 16 in Afghan village shooting. Nearly all of them were women and children. They said that it was due to a breakdown. U.S.-led forces must leave Afghanistan, says a former Afghan prime minister. Afghanistan Taliban vow revenge for civilians killed by American soldier. You think anything will happen to these guys? No criminal charges against 5 soldiers involved in Quran burning and urinating video. Criminal charges would be over the top. We know British SAS are in Somalia for their oil, but what? Australian SAS are in Africa as well. This is GGN. Thank you.